John, what brought you to this conference today?
Well, a lot of things. One was the quality and the diversity of the speakers and facilitators. It's an extraordinary group of people. And there are things I didn't know even before I came that I learned this morning.
So do you have any particular interests that drew you to this event? Any parallel concerns?
Well, there's plenty of concerns. I mean, the world is in a mess on the one hand. On the other hand, there's a tremendous amount of energy and creativity and intelligence and idealism that's coming forth to address the world's problems. Particular things I heard about this morning was this Omega system that integrates growing algae, so it produces food, it takes care of wastewater, it converts energy, and it's all offshore. And it is an amazing kind of integration of a lot of problems and solutions into one package. So that was great.
So there are some new technologies that are being discussed.
New technologies, but at least 50% of the conversation around the technology is about the social integration or the social environment of the technology. And in fact, that's one of the biggest problems people brought up this morning was, hey, we got this great technology, but it's very hard to explain it to people in a way that motivates them to do anything about it.
Well, is this a grassroots effort, like we'll develop new energy systems from the grassroots, or somebody will make a breakthrough, discover something, and then find a way to sell it, and it'll become widespread?
Well, that's actually part of the debate that was going on this morning. Some people were talking about open source. They were talking about the model of Linux and Red Hat. Linux is free and open source. Red Hat makes money by showing you how to use it more effectively. And so some people were saying this morning, we shouldn't try to patent breakthrough technologies in certain critical areas of food, energy, maybe even health. We should make them open source, but then see if there is a business around helping people do it effectively. Because if you just make it open source and just put it out there, the uptake won't be sufficient.
Well, there has to be some motivation for somebody to develop it in the first place, because developing a new technology can take many years and many long hours, and usually a person hopes for some personal reward as a result of that.
Right. Well, there are some technologies that are already, they're kind of midway along. Maybe they were initially funded by grants, by research, and they did prototypes. So they're kind of at this point where the breakthrough has already happened. It's been paid for, but what would be needed to actually build a demonstration project is, a substantial amount of capital, in the tens of millions, whatever, of dollars. So that's a big question. Is that going to come through conventional kinds of financial mechanisms? Is it going to come through government grants? Is it going to come through crowdsourcing? Unlikely, But people are debating those kind of mixes.
Well, where do you think this conference is going to go once it's over? Does it look like there's going to be some kind of follow-up? This will be one step in a series of steps?
Well, I don't think that this particular group will, as a group, move forward in time and do something very different than what they did before. I think what's happening is that individuals who are making substantial and interesting contributions in different areas, they're finding each other. Maybe they'd heard of each other by name, but they didn't really understand what each other was doing. And I've already made a couple of links, and people have said, I want to talk to you after this conference about helping with this project or that project. So I think it'll be a lot of ones and twos and threes, small groups forming to carry on things that came up at this conference. And then whether or not that, in turn, people say, the way that happened was, at this Franchise for Humanity, so we ought to do that sort of thing again. We should keep having those because we got such a high yield in terms of networking and...
Now, isn't it the internet that makes all that possible? Because now it's much easier to stay connected to people regardless of geography. So you really have this technology which makes it possible to reach large numbers of people quickly and cheaply.
Well, there's some ironic paradoxes in that. Another thing that came up this morning was the lack of filtering on the internet and the fact that people are quote unquote available on the internet, but there's too many of them and you don't have a way to discriminate. So I think it was very important to both hear the speakers and then see the speakers engage in conversations and hear the participants engage in conversations. Because you have to, I could have looked up the names of some of these people and I could have said, wow, that's a talented person. That's a person working in an area I might be interested in. But until you hear them and until you see them make a joke or something, you don't have all the points of contact that you need to really say, oh, that's somebody I could collaborate with. That's somebody I could, we could not only solve the problem, we could have some fun doing it. So let's do that.
Now, is it just a matter that people are not yet collaborating enough, or are there serious impediments, serious resistance to changing anything?
Both. People aren't collaborating enough for a wide variety of reasons. The collaborators themselves may not be the optimum for each other. You know, the techniques for collaboration are maybe too burdensome. I mean, it's a real art to design a meeting that respects the time and talent and energy of the people who are coming, and makes very efficient use of time, but at the same time, you know, isn't regimented, doesn't either bore people or try to control them. It's a real art to get that to happen, and a lot of people haven't had that experience. They've had the experience that meetings are really boring.
They often are.
Or painful, and so if you talk to them about collaboration, it's kind of like, well, let me read the guy's papers, or there's a lot of barriers.
Collaboration sounds good as a principle, but you want
Right.
to see it in action in a specific situation.
Yeah, and you need steps. I mean, I find it just maybe just me. I'm not a millennial, you know. I'm a boomer, so it's slower for me. But for me, it's 3 points of contact. I have to meet someone, have some other connection, and by the third connection, I say, okay, maybe this is somebody I can collaborate with.
Now, if you collaborate with someone, does that mean that you risk losing the credit if you do something good? Because there seems to be this human drive of elevating one's own ego, like, I want to get credit for this.
Yeah. I used to worry about that a lot more when I was younger. I don't worry about that very little. I mean, you want to be respected. You know, you definitely don't want to be, here, let's collaborate, and then I'm going to go out and describe this as entirely my own work, and you won't be mentioned at all. I mean, that's a bad outcome. You don't want that to happen. But as far as, equal billing, or your name is bigger than my name, or, something like that. I mean, one of the talks this morning was about eagles, who tend to like to fly alone, and how challenging it is to get eagles to come together. They don't flock naturally. And what leadership is getting eagles to flock. It's getting them to say, yes, we're eagles. Yes, we're used to having the whole sky to ourselves. We're not going to do that. This is a problem that needs all of us. So we're just not going to do that behavior.
Do we need new paradigms of leadership? Because people have different temperaments. Some people are happy to follow what somebody else is recommending. Other people might feel that their ideas are the best, or they have the most forceful personality, so they should be telling everyone what to do. I mean, is there one size fits all in leadership, or?
It's not so much one size fits all. I think it's, when you say paradigm, people say, well, what would you call the paradigm? And then you'd give it a description. And somebody would listen to that description, leadership by walking around, leadership by quiet, leadership by whatever, and people get an idea what that is. And their idea would be wrong, because until you actually do it, until you experience it, you don't really know what it is. So yes, we need a new paradigm, and yes, it'll have to be described and written down, but yes, the written down description of it won't convey the experience of collaborating under that new paradigm.
Maybe it'll be leadership by taking responsibility for the results.
Well, it's critical to take responsibility for the results. I would say that's necessary, but far from sufficient. You have to take responsibility for the results. You have to do a lot of other things as well.
Do you think we need more people to step up to leadership? Do you think one of the problems of the world is that there are too many followers and not enough leaders?
I think there's too many people who began to step up to leadership, like they took the first step, and they're at the point where they're driving the truck, and they're not used to driving the truck, so they're being too timid when they shift gears and when they turn, and that creates a situation that's worse than than just being a follower. So like there's too many people who are leading badly, and we just need to help them move along to a higher level of leadership.
We're just about out of time. Do you have any last-minute comments that you would like to make? The audience is yours. The massive crowd is eagerly waiting.
Well, one comment was, I was a little surprised actually at how well this event is working. I could be partly because there was a lot of people brought together. There was a short timeline. There was a lot of technology. The internet live stream didn't work, and I saw all these things coming together, and I said, this is going to fail, or this is going to be disappointing. And the reason why it's working, despite my fear, was the quality of the people, and there's kind of surplus goodwill in the room, and that surplus goodwill is covering over the kind of little nuts and bolts things that I tend to worry about because I'm a facilitator. I tend to feel like I can't have a meeting unless I fix those things. So it's an interesting lesson for me that maybe I can be less of a perfectionist about meetings, and they'll still succeed very well.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
All right.
John
Good
Kelly.
to talk to you.
Okay.